Creed, Alter Bridge, Tremonti, do these names ring a bell? What unites three of the most important rock bands of our time? Who was named Guitarist of the Year 3 years in a row, being one of the best heavy metal guitarists in history? It's time to learn about Mark Tremonti's fascinating personal and musical career.
Welcome to Trembol Podcast, the place for music stories that thrill.
Chapter 1, The Beginnings of a Legendary Guitarist. I'm Mark Tremonti, although many people know me by my nickname True. I was born on April 18, 1974 in Detroit, although I spent my childhood moving from one place to another in the United States, Illinois, Orlando, South Carolina. My story begins when my parents, of Italian descent and very Catholic, decided to move to Illinois. There, at the age of 11, my first contact with music would take place, thanks to my older brothers, who did not stop listening to Kiss or Metallica. With $25 that I had saved, I bought my first guitar, a fake copy of the famous Gibson Les Paul. My parents signed me up for guitar lessons, but the teacher didn't teach me anything I wanted to learn: the guitar parts of Metallica's wonderful album, Master of Puppets. I stopped classes, but I continued practicing on my own, so I learned to play by ear and with a book that I bought. One of the first songs I wrote was called Yesterday. In 1989, when I was 15 years old, my family moved again, this time to Orlando, Florida, where I enrolled in a school called Lake Highland Preparatory School. As fate would have it, there I would cross paths with a very important person in my life, Scott Stapp. At that time, I played in many bands, including one called Wits End. It was a very hard period for me because my mother, Mary, was diagnosed with lupus, telling us that her life was in danger. Luckily, my mother would beat the disease for many years, until in 2002 she would finally die. When I was in the band Alter Bridge, I wrote the song In Loving Memory for her. When I graduated, I moved to South Carolina to study finance at Clemson University. I wasn't very convinced, so after only a year, I returned to Florida to enroll at State University. Again, fate crossed my path, making me meet Scott Stapp again. With him, I would found one of the most important hard rock bands of the 90s and 2000s, Creed. Chapter 2, The Creed Age. Passionate about composing and acting, Scott, who was the stepson of a Pentecostal minister, wrote almost always on Christian and spiritual topics, but I did not, which caused multiple arguments between us. The fact is that together we did many songs. We decided to put together a band, so we started auditions that would come out of bassist Brian Marshall, drummer Scott Phillips, and rhythm guitarist Brian Brasher. With that composition of 5 members, we would play until 1994, when the guitarist left us and we stayed as a quartet. At the same time that I studied and rehearsed. To make a little money, I worked as a cook in a restaurant called Chili's. We started performing in bars and small clubs in Tallahassee for audiences of about 200 people under the name of Naked Toddler. But the name didn't convince anyone. So when our bassist Marshall proposed to reuse the name of a band he had played in called Maddox Creed, Scott Stapp loved it, although he decided to keep only the part of Creed. We all accepted. Yeah. The owner of one of the bars where they played, named Jeff Hansen, put us in touch with a product friend, John Kurzweg, financing the recording of the debut album for the incredible figure of $6,000. The album is titled My Own Prison, with a single of the same name. We sold no less than 6,000 copies throughout Florida. A lot of our music was focused on the search for spirituality, but My Own Prison was about just the opposite. It talked about us trying to get out of that spirituality. Creed was a group with a certain name, but we were still a local band. Everything would change for us when in 1997, Diana Meltzer, an executive at Wind Up Records, heard the album. She instantly decided that he would sign us to his label and release the album nationally. Yahoo! We released 3 more singles throughout 1997 with My Own Prison, selling more than 6 million copies. I'm talking about Torn, What's This Life For? And One. All of the tracks reached #1 on Billboard's Hot Mainstream Rock Tracks chart, making us the first band to achieve such a feat with a debut album. In 1999, we already had our second and most successful album, Human Clay. It was an immediate success, smashing our previous sales figure of 10 million copies. We present it with Higher, a song that talks about lucid dreaming. Higher spent 17 weeks at the top of the rock charts. It was followed by What If, a song in which we talk about hostility and Are You Ready? Although the biggest success, and the one that we could say is the key song of our record, was With Arms Wide Open, in which we talk about fatherhood. With this song, we won our first and only Grammy for Best Rock Song in 2001. After a fantastic tour, things in the band were starting to get tense, especially between our singer, Scott Stapp, and my friend and bassist, Brian Marshall. So much so that Marshall left Creed in 2000. For me, Mark Tremonti, things didn't go badly, and in December 2002, I married my girlfriend, Victoria Rodriguez. Together, we have 3 children, Austin, Pearson, and my beautiful daughter with Down syndrome, Stella. We live in Florida, next door to the famous golfer Tiger Woods. In 2002, we released Creed's 3rd album called Weathered. It would also become a bestseller thanks to 6 singles, My Sacrifice, One Last Breath, Hide,
Where there's no reason left to hide.
Don't Stop Dancing,
Don't stop dancing.
Weathered, and Bullets.
I think they shoot 'cause they want it.
Apart from the guitars, I had to record the bass because of the departure of our bass player Marshall. The tour in support of the album was an overwhelming success, but it would end with a very complicated concert in Chicago that would end up causing the dissolution of the band. Chapter 3, the Alter Bridge Era. Weathered started off on the wrong foot. Our vocalist and founder of Creed, Scott Stapp, was in a car accident, suffering a concussion and damage to his vertebrae. This caused her growing addiction to alcohol to add painkillers. Musically, the tour was great, but personally, the relationship with Scott was becoming more and more complex, which would lead to the disunity of the band. Scott was going through a very bad patch, so much so that in 2003, after drinking a bottle of whiskey, he took a gun from his collection and pointed it at his head. Luckily, when she looked at a photo of her son, Jagger regretted it. Scott went so far as to say that he was convinced that all the members of Creed wanted him dead so that he would become a martyr like Kurt Cobain and thus increase record sales. This would not be the only occasion when Stapp came close to suicide. In 2006, while in Miami, he jumped off a balcony and fell 12 meters, fracturing his skull and breaking his hip and nose. He would eventually be diagnosed with bipolar disorder after a psychotic break, which accounted for much of his behavior. With a lot of effort and therapy, by 2015, Stapp was completely sober again. In case you're wondering, I don't consume anything. They don't even pose a temptation to me. If I consumed it, I would not be able to play. My 6 strings would become 9. As I told you, Creed had been broken, so in 2004, we published a greatest hits and announced our dissolution after having sold more than 30 million records worldwide in just 7 years and having performed almost 5,000 concerts.
Wow.
I, Mark Tremonti, felt that I needed to go back to my rock roots. Creed drummer Scott Phillips was at the same point in life, so we started writing together. We were soon joined by former Creed bassist Marshall, but we were missing a new vocalist for our new band. I suddenly remembered that I had loved the singer of a group called the Mayfield Four, who had opened for Creed years ago. The singer's name was Miles Kennedy. We called him and asked him to put his voice on a couple of songs we were working on. None of us could remember hearing someone with his voice and his passion. As soon as we heard him, we knew he was the person we were looking for. Afterwards, he came to rehearse with us in Orlando, and we realized that he was one of the most humble and pleasant people we had ever met. As a rite of passage, we had Miles bungee jump. The four of us got along perfectly. The future was right before our eyes. The good thing about Miles is that his guitar style and mine come from different schools. He is a more jazz-based musician. He likes classic heavy, while I'm more focused on metal. Next was the name. I thought of a bridge near my home as a child when I lived in Detroit. The bridge was on a street called Alter Road. We children were not allowed to cross the bridge because there was a lot of crime on the other side, so for us it represented the unknown. That's where Alter Bridge came from. My brother Michael became the publicist for Alter Bridge, and my brother Dan became the creator of the artwork for all the Alter Bridge albums. He had already done it before with Creed. With everything ready in August 2004, we released Alter Bridge's debut album, One Day Remains. Although it received mixed reviews, it would be the best-selling album in Alter Bridge's history for songs such as Open Your Eyes. Also for Broken Wings. And the biggest hit, Metalinga. Our relationship with Wind-Up Records was not good. We didn't share the band's vision, so we decided to buy the rights to Alter Bridge from them. I won't tell you the exact figure, but I can tell you that it took us a long time to pay for it. But the label was not the only problem. We received a lot of criticism for dissolving Creed and pressure to reform it. They said that Alter Bridge sounded like Creed with another singer. I was so fed up that I declared that Creed would never exist again. Nope. Time would make me rectify it. In 2007, we signed a new contract with Universal Republic Records. We had ready what I consider our best work, Blackbird. Released in 2007, he achieved great success with songs like Watch Over You, and especially the title track, Blackbird, whose guitar solo, performed by me and Miles Kennedy, was named the best guitar solo of all time by Guitarist magazine in 2011. We would present Blackbird on a wonderful and successful world tour, which was saved on a live DVD recorded in 2008 in Amsterdam. After the tour, we resumed the relationship with Scott, who had followed his solo path since the separation of Creed. We felt that we had left Creed unfinished, so together we decided to record a new album. In 2009, Full Circle was born, accompanied by 3 singles, Overcome, A Thousand Faces, and the song that worked best, Rain. It was not as good in sales as we expected, but the tour of America, Europe, and Australia during the summers of 2009 and 2010 was a success, being captured in the concert film Creed Live. Chapter 4, Creed or Alter Bridge, Difficult Decision. In 2008, my brother and I formed a community of online musicians, production company, and record label called Fret 12, with which we released a documentary DVD to teach guitar playing under the title Mark Tremonti, The Sound and the Story. It would be the first in a series of instructional DVDs.
I've been a fan of guitar instructional videos for decades.
While Marshall Phillips and I, Mark Tremonti, were touring with Scott Stapp as Creed, the singer of Alter Bridge, Miles Kennedy began working as lead vocalist with Guns N' Roses and Velvet Revolver lead guitarist Slash. The idea that Marshall, Phillips, and I had was to alternate tours between Alter Bridge and Creed. We even got together to work on a 5th Creed album, but things cooled down again. Scott Stapp thought we'd leave Alter Bridge and dedicate ourselves entirely to Creed, but that wasn't our intention. Nope. In fact, in 2010, we teamed up with Miles again to record Alter Bridge's 3rd album, AB3. It is a concept album that received a lot of critical acclaim. The lead single, Isolation, reached #1 on the Hot Mainstream Rock Tracks chart, being our first single as Alter Bridge to do so. We would re-release the DVD with the recording of the 2012 concert at Wembley, our biggest show up to that point. You know, I'm always writing music, both for Creed and for Alter Bridge, but some of the songs I wrote didn't fit for any of the bands because they had a heavier sound, something closer to thrash metal, so I decided that I would take a step forward and form my own band, with me being the vocalist. I decided to call her by my last name, Tremonti. So in 2012, under my record label, Fret 12, I released my first solo album, All I Was, presenting it with You Waste Your Time. The public and the critics liked my compositions as much as my powerful voice. The truth is that 2012 was a very complete year, apart from finishing the Alter Bridge tour. And my debut solo album, we toured again with Creed, and at the end of the year, we reunited Alter Bridge to release in 2013 our fourth album, Fortress, with Addicted to Pain as the first single. It's an album full of energy in which we challenge ourselves to get the most out of the arrangements. Chapter 5, The Tremonti Era. You know that my thing is the guitar. I have always used the American brand PRS, Paul Reed Smith. In fact, I have the honor of being one of the few guitarists in the world who has a PRS guitar designed to my exact specifications, the single cut type model.
Hey there, Mark Tremonti here at the PRS factory with my signature guitar that I'm going to show you today.
By the way, I was very happy with the performance of my first solo album, so I got down to work, and in 2015, I was ready to release my second album, Guitarist. In it, I tried to capture the spirit of the speed metal songs I had listened to all my life. As an example, the single Radical Change. Another good example would be the second single, Another Heart. Guitarist was the first of two albums I had written and recorded together, so I gave my fans a surprise. And at the beginning of 2016, I released the second album entitled Dust, presenting it with my last mistake. I missed my Alter Bridge bandmates a bit, so in 2016, I reunited with Miles, Marshall, and Phillips to record our fifth studio album, The Last Hero. We would be touring around the world in 2017 with a very special concert at the O2 Arena, which we recorded and released as our third live album, Live at the O2 Arena Plus Rarities. During this tour, we also recorded two shows we did at the Royal Albert Hall with a 52-piece orchestra. Amazing! I haven't told you, but I love meeting young children after concerts because it reminds me of when I was a kid when I met Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. It made me so happy to shake his hand that being able to do that now with a guy makes me very happy. As I told you, I live in a mansion in Florida with my wife and 3 children. I don't live in great luxury. When I'm there, I like to relax and rent movies every night. Well, I do have a whim. Do you know what I collect? Pinball machines. I have some accounts. For my next personal challenge, in 2018, I teamed up with science fiction novelist John Shirley, creating my fourth solo album, a concept album under the name A Dying Machine. I accompanied the album with a novel written with John Shirley. In it, we tie up the loose ends of the album's plot. The main tune would be Take You With Me. It was 2019 when Alter Bridge's 6th album, Walk the Sky, was released. I describe it as a John Carpenter movie, that old school synth kind of vibe. To compose it, I was inspired by some old loops I created and others I found randomly on the internet. Miles loved the idea and immediately joined in by composing songs such as Wouldn't You Rather? As usual, after the tour, I focused again on my solo career in such a way that in 2021, I already had my 5th album as Tremonti ready, Marching in Time. The first single from the album was If Not For You. The following year, 2022, Alter Bridge returned with the 7th album, Pawns and Kings, released with Silver Tongue. Chapter 6. Does Tremonti sing Sinatra? I'll tell you a secret. For years, I've sung Frank Sinatra's songs in private. One night, I found an old video of him performing The Song Is You from 1944.
The words are true. The song is you.
It made me want to immerse myself in his vocal approach. I was excited about it and wanted to do something with it. I thought about it several times and came up with a fantastic idea linked to a new charity initiative I had created called Take a Chance for Charity. I became associated with the National Down Syndrome Society, to which I belong because my young daughter Stella has this syndrome, and I decided to make an album with my favorite Sinatra songs, donating the proceeds to the foundation. That way I contacted the remaining members of Sinatra's band, including his musical director, Mike Smith, to record with them. At first they were quite hesitant, but they would soon discover my vocal abilities and my amazing crooner skills. In this way, in 2022, I published Mark Tremonti Sings Frank Sinatra. The album reached #1 in the categories of Current Traditional Jazz Album and Independent Album on the Billboard Music Chart.
'Cause I've got you under my skin. Yes.
It has been my most ambitious and challenging creative project to date because it is so far from my natural genre, rock. Many times I am asked what is my favorite song from my discography, but you know, songs are like my children. There can be no better one than the other for me. By the way, I got a taste for these classics by releasing in 2023 a Christmas album entitled Christmas Classics Old and New.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Back to my thing, hard rock in 2023, we announced that Creed would be reuniting again to play our first concerts together after 12 years. Also in 2024, I released the single Just Too Much as an introduction to my 6th solo album as Tremonti. The end will show us how.
Sometimes it's just too much. Sometimes it's just not right.
Whether it's solo, with Alter Bridge, with Creed, or on new adventures, you have a lot of Mark Tremonti to enjoy. Mark Tremonti is one of the most important guitarists of our time, as confirmed by the Guitar World Guitarist of the Decade Award. He is also one of rock's most prolific songwriters with more than 20 albums released and 53 million albums sold worldwide. With all this, we can only say that Mark Tremonti is a living legend of rock and roll.
We hope you liked the video a lot. You know, sharing is living.
Thank you very much, Trembles. We love you.